Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegraywolf.com. So, lots to talk about today, lots that's happened since last we spoke, because we had PAX East last weekend. This happens to be the Easter weekend when I'm recording this, so I want to say Happy Easter to all of you out there of the persuasion to celebrate such things. And there's been a lot of things, a lot of news we could talk about this week, a lot of things happening. I feel very, I guess, stressed because there were so many different topics that I could have picked and chosen to be a part of the show this week. And yet, the topic that I did eventually pick for next week's question, I think is going to be just quirky and stupid enough that it really didn't make any difference what happened between then and now. But in any case, I'm still processing a lot of the stuff that I observed at PAX, a lot of the really cool video game news that came out of GDC as well, and hoping to kind of wrap some of those things up in future videos. So want to make sure that we cover some of those topics as well, putting them on note, just letting you know kind of that there was a lot to process between then and now. In any case, what are we going to do today? I'm going to break down the question we had for last time, which was about watching and playing video games. I think there was a really cool conversation about this, a question that wasn't even in my mind a month ago, but now it seems like it was a great question to ask, and I have thought about this extensively over the last 2 weeks, particularly with PAX being in the middle. So we're going to break that down a little bit. I'm going to talk about, as I always do, your contributions. I'm going to also break down some of my thoughts as to what I think really the whole question is about, and where I sit on the whole watching versus playing kind of question and situation. And then I'm going to ask you guys a question next week, as I said, which is pretty absurd, which I think you're going to like. But it should have you kind of shuffling through your DVD collection, if that makes any sense. Anyway, so that being said, let's get right down to it. I know I want to welcome some of the new members to our community. And Male White Mage did stumble upon something that has been the bane of my existence, which is the new website. Does not allow me to understand when you guys are brand new. So that's why, as he says, my 128 kilobits of memory is absolutely full with usernames. It totally is. I am kind of flying by the seat of my pants in that regard. But if you guys are new to the community and it is your first time commenting, just let me know that in the message. That'll probably take care of a lot of our problems, right? Let me know, hey, Commodore, first time commenter. Or, do the old standard, first time, long time thing, like people that were calling in to talk radio or something. I don't know. Just let me know somehow that you're a first time commenter, and that way I won't have to do all this kind of craziness of remembering who has and hasn't been here before and all that crazy shit. But anyway, so here is the list of people, and there are a lot of new folks to the community this week. That's exciting. I think that means that we've asked a question that probably gets down to the heart of what people want to talk about. So I'm always excited to see a lot of new people. Captain Kirk. Thanks, Captain. I really appreciate your work, and I'm glad that you're here as a part of the community. Welcome to Captain Kirk. Swizzlet. I think that's a cool name. Swizzlet. It's like a mix between a Twizzler and a swizzle stick. Welcome to you. But a small one. Anyway, so let's see. How about Zero? That's an interesting name, it could be video game centered perhaps, maybe indicative of a score, I don't know, who knows. Zero. Bearded Drew, which is our old friend from videogameauctions.com. Great to have you on board, even with this new and exciting username and beard, as it were. Welcome to Bearded Drew. I Feel Asleep, which I thought was a very clever username considering the icon and picture from Metal Gear on the NES. I Feel Asleep. Totally. Really like that username. I think that's a good one. And then probably one of the most epic and wonderful usernames I have ever heard before here on Clan of the Grey Wolf. I think this is just awesome. Failed Legend, The Eternal Gish. I'm going to let that one sink in for a little bit and just say welcome to all of you. Thank you all for being a part of the Weekly Wringer, and thank you for stepping over that great divide that separates those that view and those that comment so wonderfully this week. I appreciate your comments here. The comments are what keep the show going. So, without you, what am I really doing here, right? Doesn't make a lot of sense. I'd stop it and I'd do something else. So maybe, you know, if you don't want me to do something else, maybe just stop commenting. I don't know. But the point is, you guys didn't. You keep it going. You've made a lot of good comments. Let's get into those comments right now. Now, before I get into the kind of thrust of a lot of the comments, which is something I like to do here on the relaunched Weekly Wringer, is I also like to, for a question like this, I like to kind of tally the score, as it were. Now, last week, I asked you guys, you know, is it possible? You know, can watching a good game be as good as playing a good game, or as fun, right? And the score was surprising to me because I thought resoundingly that the no's would have it, that, you know, that it would be it's a gamer-centric community, guys. I figured for sure we'd have so many people out there that were going to tell me, what are you, crazy? Playing a game is so much better than watching a game. Surprisingly, as of the last tally I took before I recorded this video, the no's had about 6 votes, and the yeses had about 21. So, you know, now a lot of those were caveated of like, well, it depends on genre, and you know, it's not all, you know, it depends on what a good game means or whatever the case might be. But the point is, you still said it was possible, and that you could actually have as much or more fun playing or, you know, watching a video game as you could playing one. That was surprising to me. I did not expect that. So, yet again, the community surprises me in an interesting and fun way. Now let's get into some of the nitty-gritty. Man with Harmonica started us off today, really talking about control as the basis of the medium. And I agree for the most part. Now, where does that go? Where does that bring us? It means that if you're not controlling what's going on the screen, then you're really not getting the kind of fundamental enjoyment out of gaming that it's designed to provide. I think that's an interesting point. I think you're completely legitimate in having that perspective. I just don't know that I agree. I think that you know, one of the tenets of gaming is not necessarily as much control as it is interaction. Okay? Now, do you guys see the difference there? Because I think there is a difference. You can have control of a game, right, or have some kind of control in choices versus kind of an interactivity. Now, choices are great, control is great, but I think there are ways in which you can interact with media without having a lot of control over it. And, you know, where control becomes an illusion or what have you. And there are examples that go on and on and on about that in video game academic circles. The point is, I think control is a part of gaming, but I think that interactivity is the more fundamental point that we're probably trying to point to. And interactivity takes many different forms, many of which are going to be covered by you guys in just a second by some of the comments that you gave. But I think if we look at it as more of a broad interactive definition, and that the interactivity is what's important in enjoying and having fun with video games, I think it breaks down a little bit. I think having control in that regard, being the one with the controller in your hand, becomes less important. And that interactivity, that interactive element to video gaming, really opens up a lot of veins, a lot of different ideas, a lot of different you know, modalities of enjoyment or fun within the gaming environment. So I get where you're going, but I'm going to put the brakes on and move back. Now, I wanted to mention that first because I think interactivity and control are fundamental to this whole process. So that being said, now I'm going to jump back in and talk about some of the general things that happened, some of the general thrusts of argument, kind of spreading out of the Man with Harmonica's comment now that we've kind of established some of the terms. I think it was important to kind of establish terms before we talk about some of the more general arguments. Now, one of the things that you guys went crazy on was that it really depends on genre. Now again, taking the Man with Harmonica comment into consideration, genre really defines a different level of player control. But one thing I think it doesn't do, or one thing it only partially explains, is the layer of interactivity. So, for example, you guys mentioned this, playing a puzzle game is probably less interesting to watch than say an action, shooter, for example. There are fun moments continuously happening in an action shooter. Puzzle games are more contemplative. They're asking for a different level of interactivity. And at the end of the day, if you're just watching someone play it, especially if you're watching a tape of someone playing it, I think that's going to be inherently less interesting because you're not only because you're not controlling it, but the level of interactivity is just not good, right? You're not really a part of it. 2, Let's Plays. Let's Plays were talked about extensively this week. And I think this is not at all where I was going. I was never talking about Let's Plays when I got into this question. And I didn't know if that was where I obviously didn't think the conversation was going to go there. I'm really glad it did, though, because it got me thinking about a lot of the things that I like in terms of Let's Plays and don't like, by the way. And I think there is a good amount of overlap there for us to talk about. So, for example, a Let's Play has virtually no interactivity. There is some where you maybe suggest to someone via comments, or you suggest that someone play a particular game, or if it's an episodic nature, you suggest something that they do next time, or whatever. But there's really no control, zero, and there's very little interactivity, talking about the terms we've already laid out. In that regard, can it be fun to watch someone do a Let's Play for a game that now you don't have any control or any interactivity with? Many of you think yes. Many of you don't like Let's Plays as well. You made that comment, but many of you think that it's fun just to watch Let's Plays. And that's a relatively new phenomenon, but one that's growing, and one I think that can be more robustly handled by those of us in the video game media that are willing to tackle it. I would love to do a Let's Play. And several of you talked about the nature of doing, for example, live streams. Live streams, they kind of get me going much more than Let's Plays do. Doing a Let's Play for me is less enjoyable as a content manufacturer than, say, doing a live stream where you guys can comment and help and be a part of it. Because that, to me, means that you guys, as a part of the live show, are a part of the interactive environment. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in more detail a little bit later. You guys also brought up the idea that really having the right players, but also the right friends playing a game is very, very important. I couldn't agree more. Some of the Let's Players you watch on the internet are more fun to watch their Let's Plays than people that are just kind of getting into it, don't even really know how to set up their camera, cover the microphone like that until you can't understand what the hell they're saying, or they're just annoying to listen to. That certainly limits your enjoyment to being able to watch a video game, right? But also, several of you mentioned the idea of playing with friends and watching friends and people that play. Part of the reason that the stream during the marathon in December worked so well was because you guys, for the most part, know myself. You know Rue. And so when we're out there playing these games, it's a great fun for you guys to interact with us and for us to interact with you in ways that we can't do normally, right? It's cool that happens. Even if it's only once a year, it happens and we love it, and that's one of the reasons why. So the fact that you have familiarity with us adds to the enjoyment, and I couldn't agree more about that. Along those lines, another thing you guys mentioned is the nature of having siblings. So I grew up with 2 younger brothers, right? Now this, by virtue of that fact, it meant that I had to spend most of my time with video games, unless you have brothers that don't play at all, but both of my brothers did. You spend most of your time watching rather than playing. You bring somebody into the mix that has a different system or whatever the case might be that comes over and visits for a little while, you're throwing even more people onto the block. They're playing, you're playing, your brothers are playing, your sisters are playing, whatever. The point of the matter is you spend a lot of your time watching. And when that happens, I think there is if you grew up an only child, I bet you have less fun watching video games than those of us that grew up with siblings, or at least with someone that we played regularly with, because we were forced to sit and watch. So being forced to sit and watch made it an enjoyable experience. It's something that we now have nostalgia about as well. I can speak for that from personal experience as well. And lastly, I wanted to mention